This is Strat-Edgy, and I want to talk to you about something that really skeets my Ulrich. Reviewers. Or as is known in the comments section of my videos, professional whiny crybaby pussies. Guys and gals who are supposed to know how to play video games but either lack the capacity for such strenuous things or are so biased in their opinions that even their tastes have become like dried and reconstituted milk. Should reviewers know how to play games? Is this a trick question? No? It's not? You mean this is a real question that somebody's asked and we aren't hoisting them on their own retard? Okay, fine. Let me answer your question with another question. If your job was to say, tell me how good a car is to drive, but you sucked at driving cars. I mean, like, at your house there is a tree with several of your cars now hanging from it because you keep driving your four-wheel drive Subarus up into the highest fucking branches. Do you think that for 1 minute that I would trust anything you have to say about cars? I mean, that's like asking a 3-year-old what the drag coefficient of a space shuttle is. Alright, how about another example for the slow and feeble? Let's say you're a cook. Your job is to cook me a meal, but you don't know how to measure and you have no sense of taste. What's to keep you from serving me a dish that tastes like it was comprised of several hot dogs that were stored in between a homeless man's toes? This is a legit question. How are you qualified to do your job if you don't know how to do your job well? It's supposed to be somehow different because we're talking about games? I'm not saying that you need to be Chef Ramsay here or something. I'm saying that there is a baseline competency for which you must meet in order to be qualified for your fucking job. I wouldn't hire a blind security guard. Why would you hire Stephen Hawking to review Cuphead?
I suck at Cuphead. Let us get this out of the way. But in my defense, the run-and-gun platformer from Studio MDHR and Microsoft is difficult.
Now I know what you might be thinking. Why is he talking about this? Didn't we already go over this topic like a month or so ago? Why is Strat-Edgy always late to the party? First off, I got shit to do. If I wasn't busy being a cog in the machine of the everyday, I too could be in the know when shit happens, alright? Second, this isn't about Cuphead. This is actually about IGN and another game you may have never heard of called Elix. So Elix is this awesome game for Piranha Bytes, the same devs who made games like Gothic and Risen. I have been streaming the game lately and I've had a great time learning the ins and outs of the game, and it is a game that seems to enjoy fucking you in holes that weren't meant to have things going in them. Most of all, I like the game because I'm always learning new things, but learning just doesn't appear to be fun for everyone. I'm gonna have my dapper friend Gabriel from the UK read out a section from the IGN review for Elix.
The biggest problem with the LEX is that it's buggy to the point I almost wasn't able to finish it. Broken event triggers, horrible party member AI, and missing a misplaced map markers that make quest targets impossible to find. To mind the worst of Fallout New Vegas or Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines at the time of the respective releases.
How dare you! Okay, so TJ appears to be setting up his role-playing pedigree issue. I take with this is that Elix is really nothing like these two games. And I can let that slide, but what I really take issue with is this.
One boss took me almost 2 hours to slay because I had to keep trying until I got lucky enough not to trigger his unblockable, nearly undodgeable rock throw attack, which he could somehow hit me with even when I was standing directly behind him too many times.
This particular paragraph was well lampooned by a YouTuber called Click4Gameplay. I'm gonna have a link to his channel in the description below.
One boss took me almost 2 hours to slay because I had to get lucky and not trigger his unblockable, nearly undodgeable rock throw attack too many times. Nearly undodgeable rock throw attack too many.
This YouTuber, a skilled gamer, effectively shows that the game is not the problem. You are the problem. This also brings up the question of difficulty. Is difficulty a problem if you are skilled at difficult games, and how should you factor that into your score? As I mentioned in my less ranty video, Can You Review a Game Objectively? Difficulty should factor into a game, but how do you score it? Well, first would be the scale of difficulty versus the player's ability to learn and adapt and become better. What I mean by this is that there is a difference between being fair and having a difficulty that is unfair. Meaning, did you fail because you did something wrong, or did you fail because the developer did something wrong? This can be a very difficult thing to judge if the person playing the game isn't skilled enough, or in the more likely case of this IGN review, not patient enough to learn the game to a point where they didn't think an easily dodgeable rock is somehow undodgeable. On my first go round with Elix, I ran into this same troll, and without any prior knowledge of how the game's timings worked, I was able, easily, to dodge every one of this thing's rock throws. In fact, as a level 1, I managed to hit the troll several times before being one-shot by a melee attack I didn't see coming. And that is the thing about these high-risk, high-reward type games. If you are skilled enough, you can almost kill anything in the game. This is not hyperbole, this is the truth. I've seen people do it. Now on to the point. What am I trying to say? Perception is a tricky thing. It plays into my argument before about value and how judging a thing's value subjectively quite often doesn't judge correctly a thing's actual value to those who like a certain type of thing. Put it another way, if you know how to play Dark Souls, your opinion of Elix might be drastically different than someone coming from, say, Fallout New Vegas. The only way to ensure you accurately judge a thing based on its actual value is to try and be as objective as possible. But that requires a shitload of work that most reviewers either do not have the patience for, or more likely, don't have the time for. So, do reviewers need to be skilled at video games? Yes. They need a baseline competency with the games that they are trying to review, not just games in general. They need to judge the game based on its learning curve and on the merits of its design. Were there a lot of cheap deaths? How many times did the camera kill you? How many times did you dodge out of the way and were hit anyway? How dodgy is the accuracy of the hitbox collision? I mean, shit, by this metric, Dark Souls is an absolute trash game. But this is only one metric out of 30 or 40 measurements. If you don't have a baseline competency with the game and are hurrying through the game, constantly bashing your head against things until they give up out of pure frustration over killing you over and over and over again, then your experience is so far removed from the experience of the average viewer that your opinion on the game is no longer valid. Most gamers will give up on a mission or come back to it later after a threshold of a couple of deaths. But a reviewer's job is quite literally to play as much of the game as possible. In this case, the reviewer is actually doing themselves a disservice and the game as well. Think about the world that reviewers live in. They have tight deadlines in which they must, in some cases, finish a 50-hour game in less than a week, write a review, do a video of that same review, and have it edited and approved. They are sitting on their couch with their Cheeto crumbs resting between their massive man cleavage, or in some glorious cases, glistening, wonderful woman cleavage, forcing their way through a game at breakneck speed in order to get their work done in a timely fashion. Imagine what that does for their enjoyment. If a game is too difficult, like Elix, where it literally punishes you just for even attempting to play the game, and only rewards the curious with success, do you really think that a reviewer is going to see that as favorable? They would be inherently biased towards a game that does not frustrate them, a game that gets out of their way so that they could do their job quickly, a game that kills them over and over again with non-traditional gameplay that must be learned through trial and error, like, oh, I don't know, life. That type of game already has 3 strikes against it, because it is making the reviewer do more work than they need to. This is why I call for objectivity in reviews the most. When you're doing a subjective review, your bias towards the game is heavily affected by how much enjoyment that you personally got out of it. But in an objective test, you are literally judging the value of a product based on criteria. Based on criteria that should be able to be reproducible results no matter who is doing the test. But this all falls apart if you are so unskilled at the game that you are unable to finish the goddamn tutorial because you only have 2 fingers on one hand.
From the fact that the end game armor costs more than I made in 30 levels of exploring and questing, to the aggravating reality that damage from hard to avoid ranged attacks is so high. Fights with more than 3 foes at once are almost always suicide, even at higher levels.
This has been a rant from Strat-Edgy, and now that you heard it, get good and praise the sun.